how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke female firefighters accidentally set forest on fire. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. This is a funny story because, of course, the story is diverse female firefighters are important. Look, anyone who could do the job, yes, it's wonderful if you're female or if you're indigenous or your skin color is different or if you have a different binary identity. All those things are fine. Just if you're going to be putting out fires and putting them out, not setting them accidentally, if you're going to be putting them out, we don't care what you look like, but you do have to live up to the standards. So if this is some kind of a way to duck the standards where you're actually going to put the firefighters in danger and you're going to put the people they're trying to save in danger and you're going to put property in danger, then it is a problem. Here's the story. From the Washington Free Beacon, burning down barriers, female firefighter conference causes out-of-control forest fire. Training exercise aims to build allies by showcasing value of gender diversity and inclusion. Again, you could just do the work. You don't have to put on a show. What happened? Female firefighters taking part in a Women in Fire training exercise program intended to promote, quote, mental health and gender diversity and inclusion accidentally caused an out-of-control forest fire in Banff National Park in Canada. Residents in the surrounding areas were evacuated and several buildings were damaged on May 3rd as the female firefighters initiated a prescribed burn that quickly escalated into an uncontrolled blaze. Here's the context. Banff National Park is in Canada, where South American migrants have been fleeing to escape the lawless squalor of America's biggest cities. Can't really dispute that there, and if illegal aliens want to go to Canada instead of filling up the America's cities that are already in massive trouble, that's completely fine. What people are saying. Before the conference, local news outlets were celebrating the Women's Fire Conference for its efforts to, quote, break down barriers in a male-dominated industry. The 12-day training program was described as an opportunity to engage participants of all different genders, ethnic, and racial backgrounds to explore the growing role of women in fire management. Jane Park, the female fire management specialist who helped organize the conference, described the group of women who accidentally started the forest fire as the cream of the crop. And that probably should make us worry a little bit, particularly if you live in Canada. A former grad school ski bum, Park said the training program was an opportunity for female firefighters to showcase the value of diversity in order to build allies among men and people who are in the majority. Well, for some more details on this story, and this is an interesting article because this was a conversation that goes on and talks about what Jane Park is trying to do with female firefighting, but it doesn't mention the disaster of this burn that got out of control. But it is still funny. From CBC, firefighting needs all hands on deck to keep up with wildfires. Jane Park hopes more people of diverse backgrounds will get into the field, and she has a workshop to help. And fighting fires is dangerous, hard work. I've never done it, but I know it's very difficult and it's very risky and, good for anybody that wants to try to do it. But if you're not capable of doing it for whatever physical or mental reason, or you don't have enough training, you ought not to be doing it because you're putting yourself, other firefighters, and other just regular civilians in danger, and their property too. Property is also important. It's going to take a full team of effort to combat wildfires in Alberta and across Canada, says Jane Park. But for that, she says, the firefighting field needs to become a whole lot more welcoming. Quote, the fire industry is very male-dominated, Park told What on Earth host Laura Lynch. Park is the fire and vegetation specialist for Parks Canada's Banff Field Unit. The Korean Canadian is one of the leaders running a workshop there called Women in Fire Training Exchange, which aims to bring more diversity into firefighting. Well, we're trying to change the diversity of the community and provide people with the opportunity to gain some of those skills in a really safe environment, said Park. Safe, but they did start an out-of-control fire. The 12-day workshop wrapped up on May 12th and offered people the chance to participate in live fire training and have discussions with people who actually work in the field. Alberta is currently dealing with worsening wildfires across the province. Over 30,000 people have fled their homes, and firefighters are working tirelessly to control the spreading flames. A lot of those, of course, are arson by environmentalists, which is incredibly strange and probably suitable for another video. Park is working to make sure there are more people who feel comfortable in her line of work. Her workshop brings together people of different genders, ethnicity, and backgrounds. She says people have attended from across Canada as well as California, Virginia, and Bolivia, but they are facing discrimination. When she was a kid, Park always played outside, so transitioning to working outside as an adult was a natural fit. That sounds like a good qualification. Over the past 20 years, Park has worked in firefighting-related jobs across Canada. Now that is a better qualification. She focuses on the benefits of prescribed burns, which can prevent deadly wildfires that get out of hand. But her position isn't always recognized, she says, because she's a woman. Quote, "Still, sometimes I show up at meetings and they assume that I'm not the incident commander, and they refer to my colleagues, who are my subordinates, thinking that they're the leaders," said Park. "Some people redirect and apologize. Other people continue to ignore me. I think that's still something that happens." Rhodey Wiseman is a transgender fire participant and training specialist who grew up in Calgary, but now works across the border in Olympia, Washington for the Eco Studies Institute. Wiseman started working in fire suppression in Northern Ontario, but ran into discrimination. Quote, "There was a lot of misogyny, homophobia, transphobia that was really difficult for me," said Wiseman. "There was also really prominent racism, and especially anti-Indigenous racism, that was pretty apparent. And all of that was really difficult to navigate, especially as a young person." Wiseman wasn't out as trans yet and left the job because of the culture. Wiseman attended Park's workshop to learn about the fire ecology and to join in the diversity. Amy Cardinal Christensen says having more diversity in the people fighting fires can offer different perspectives. Christensen is an Indigenous fire specialist within the National Fire Management Division of Parks Canada. Look, regardless of your cultural background, your skin color, your gender, your sexual preference, that is not how you should base your firefighting. You should base your firefighting based on your training and your heroism. That's really all it takes. Quote, "I've just seen where Indigenous people are often left out of some of these big prescribed fire events that we have. And so one thing that's been really great about this organization is the inclusion of Indigenous people," said Christensen, who was the event's Indigenous liaison officer. The Métis woman says Indigenous practices are essential to the health of Canadian forests, and it's important that decision makers listen to those perspectives. It's really not important to listen to people based on their cultural background, even though, yes, of course, Native Americans, Native Canadians, Indigenous people, whatever, have been there for many generations probably, and do understand things about nature, things about the land that people may not otherwise understand. So fine, just tell them. But generally, just focus on your training for fighting fires, not playing games. Amy Cardinal Christensen says Indigenous people managed fires in North America long before settlers showed up. And some Indigenous leaders say government isn't doing enough to involve First Nations in emergency management plans. Quote, "Indigenous people are the real firekeepers of Canada. They've been the ones who've been stewarding this territory for millennia," says Christensen. When settlers first came to Canada, the beautiful open green forest that they saw, most of that was tended by Indigenous people with fire. I don't disagree with any of that. That's probably sensible. So tell them what you know, give them some feedback, but really it needs to be done in a trained, organized way. You can't just say, "Hey, don't worry about it. I got this. I'm Indigenous." It's got to be some sort of a trained, expert, coherent response when there's a fire. When Park started in her line of work, she realized there weren't many women doing what she was doing. In fact, Park says there was only one other woman working in fire for Parks Canada. Quote, "For a long time, I didn't think about what that meant until I got a bit more of a leadership role," said Park. Quote, I started to hear from women who were starting out their careers and who were saying they've never seen a woman in some of the types of leadership roles I've been in. And that because they saw me and saw themselves represented, they thought that it was then possible. That's one of the challenges Wiseman faces. The other one. When Wiseman was working for Canadian fire agencies, Wiseman didn't see anyone like them in leadership roles, says Wiseman. Quote, I think it's been really exciting to see that more. And that has encouraged me to pursue more leadership roles. And I hope that seeing events like this can inspire others. Park says that there's still a way to go. Anecdotally, she says that on the Fires Parks Canada fights, only about 10% of the crew members are women. And the amount of diversity of other underrepresented groups, such as racialized people, is still much lower. And she says that as climate change continues... And she says that climate change, as it continues to impact Canadian forests, that needs to change. Why? You know, it's almost like none of this is merit or results based whatsoever. Of course, there's going to be 10% at most female firefighters on a firefighting team because it's traditionally been a male role. That's a normal thing to see. The fact that you think that climate change is taking over the world doesn't mean you need more women on your firefighting team. Climate change aside, if there are fires, you should be looking at, did we do a good job putting out this fire? Did we protect lives? Did we protect the safety of the crew? Did we protect property? These are the kind of things to evaluate, not looking at the gender of the people doing the work. Quote, we do need all hands on deck, which means all the diverse groups of people, said Park. Naturally, I don't agree. I think what we need is people that are brave enough to go out and do the work, and then we need to evaluate and make sure that everybody is able and capable of doing the work, because it's life or death. It's incredibly important work. Here are some fantastic comments from Reddit about this prescribed fire that went out of control in Banff, Alberta, on May 3rd, 2023. And there's some video of the fire itself. This is, again, a prescribed burn is something that you do to control the forest. That's okay. When it gets out of control, which it almost never does because there are professionals that do it, that's when it's a big deal, and that's when it deserves a story. From StrongBud82, was this the one set by the Conference of Firefighters? Yes, it was. Despite a province-wide fire ban and 20,000 people evacuating due to fires, these short-sighted individuals decided to keep their schedule and attempt to do a, quote, controlled burn. Anyone who knows about doing a controlled burn properly should know full well that 50% of the planning and effort is all just waiting for the right conditions to safely burn. And the conditions were not right for the burn. This article from Western Standard explains these ladies should not have done this burn. Quote, if they were doing live fire exercises as advertised, it likely wasn't a matter of poor physical or technical performance as much as a matter of poor judgment. Quote, for example, choosing to do a live burn exercise in windy and dry conditions or not having proper safety buffers in place could result in this type of catastrophe, and no amount of physical or technical capability could make up for that poor judgment. Prescribed burns getting out of control is uncommon. Quote, I've done dozens of controlled burns around municipalities without incident, but these burns were done carefully in small, manageable sections to ensure the fire couldn't get too big. If done improperly, they can easily get out of control. An errant ember landing in an errant area is all it takes. But usually these burns are done very carefully under just the right conditions and led by experienced officers, so mishaps are rare. The female firefighters were not careful enough because they wanted to show off, or because they may not have known what they were doing. It's hard to say. I don't see any kind of investigation exposing what they did wrong because, of course, doing something like that would be politically incorrect. Even using the term politically incorrect is actually now politically incorrect. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.